The shrill sound of the alarm clock cut through the silence of the small apartment, pulling Carrie from her brief and restless sleep. Her eyes, heavy with exhaustion, reluctantly opened to face another day of challenges. The clock read 5:30 a.m., but for Carrie, it felt like she had barely closed her eyes. With a deep sigh, she got up, her bare feet touching the cold floor. The apartment was silent, except for the gentle snoring coming from the room next door. Jack, her younger brother, was still sleeping soundly, oblivious to the worries weighing on his sister's shoulders. Carrie walked to the window, pulling back the worn curtain to observe the city beginning to wake up. The sky was still dark, dotted with distant lights from buildings and street lamps. It was a view she knew well, the same one her parents used to admire every morning before going to work. Her parents. The pain of loss was still fresh, like a wound that refused to heal. It had only been 3 months since the accident that took them from her and Jack, leaving them alone in the world. Carrie closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of weakness before steeling herself again. She had no time to mourn. There were bills to pay and a brother to care for. With renewed determination, Carrie headed to the bathroom. As she prepared for the day, her mind wandered over the familiar calculations: rent, bills, food, school supplies for Jack. The numbers danced in her head, an impossible equation that never seemed to resolve. Dressed and ready, Carrie went to the kitchen. She opened the fridge, her expression tightening at the sight of the nearly empty shelves. Carefully, she prepared Jack's breakfast and a sandwich for lunch, leaving a caring note beside it. "Have a great day at school, champ. I'll be home for dinner. Love you." She hesitated for a moment, the pen hovering over the paper. There was so much she wanted to say, so many promises she wanted to make. But the words stuck in her throat, and she left the note as it was. The journey to work was a mix of crowded buses and long walks. Carrie arrived at the diner where she worked as a waitress just in time for her 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. The hours dragged by, filled with orders, forced smiles, and meager tips. When her shift finally ended, Carrie barely had time to breathe before rushing to her second job, cleaning offices late into the night. Her muscles ached, her feet begged for rest, but she kept going, driven by the image of Jack waiting for her at home. It was during a break, while wiping the sweat off her forehead, that Carrie saw the ad. A piece of paper taped to the wall of the office she was cleaning. Blue Moon, luxury companions, extraordinary earnings, flexible hours. Her heart raced. The idea scared her, went against everything her parents had taught her. But the numbers didn't lie. With what she earned now, she could barely keep her head above water. And Jack deserved more than a life of deprivation. With trembling hands, Carrie tore the ad from the wall and carefully folded it, slipping it into her pocket. It was a decision that could change everything, for better or worse. When she finally got home, it was past midnight. Jack was already asleep, his homework sprawled out on the kitchen table. Carrie smiled sadly, putting away the papers and covering her brother with an extra blanket. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she took the ad from her pocket, staring intently at the words that promised a way out of their troubles. With a deep breath, she picked up her phone. "Hello. It's about the Blue Moon ad." The words left her mouth before she could take them back. As she scheduled an interview for the next day, Carrie felt a mix of fear and determination. This could be the chance to give Jack the life he deserved, no matter the personal cost. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, Carrie whispered a promise to the night silence. "Everything will be okay, Jack. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes to get us out of this situation." The distant sound of sirens echoed through the city, as if foreshadowing the uncertain path she was about to take. Carrie closed her eyes, praying for the strength to face what was to come. Tomorrow would be the start of a new life. The blue neon of the Blue Moon sign pulsed softly against the night sky, casting an ethereal glow over the club's discreet facade. Carrie hesitated for a moment before the door, her heart pounding against her ribs. She took a deep breath, adjusted the black dress she had bought especially for this night, and with a determination born of desperation, pushed the door open and entered. The interior of the Blue Moon was a world apart. Soft lights danced over mirrored surfaces, creating an atmosphere of intimacy and mystery. The air was heavy with the scent of expensive perfumes and aged whiskey. Carrie immediately felt out of place, like an intruder at a masquerade ball. "You must be the new one." A smooth voice surprised her. Carrie turned to find an elegant woman with red hair and eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. "I'm Vivian, the manager. Come with me." Vivian guided Carrie through the main hall, past tables where men in expensive suits conversed in low voices with stunning women. Carrie felt curious eyes following her, evaluating her, and fought the urge to shrink away. Backstage, Vivian introduced Carrie to the other girls. There was a mix of sympathy and caution in their eyes. They had all been in Carrie's place before. "Remember," Vivian said, her voice firm but not without compassion, "you're selling a fantasy. Be whoever they want you to be, but never lose sight of who you really are." The following hours passed in a blur of instructions, rules, and tips. Carrie learned about the club's codes, client expectations, and the lines that should never be crossed. Her head spun with information, but she clung to every word, determined to succeed. When it was finally time for Carrie to enter the hall, she felt as if she were about to step onto a stage for a crucial performance. Vivian adjusted Carrie's dress one last time and whispered, "Remember, dear, you're in control. Always." The hall was full, the soft music barely muffling the hum of conversations. Carrie walked among the tables, feeling exposed and vulnerable. She forced a smile, remembering why she was there. For Jack. For a better future. Her first client of the evening was a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a sad smile. He introduced himself as Thomas and asked only for company to drink with. As they chatted about trivialities, Carrie realized he was more interested in being heard than anything else. As the night progressed, Carrie found herself navigating through a series of personas. For a nervous young businessman, she was the understanding confidant. For an older magnate, the fascinated admirer. Each interaction was a delicate dance between what was expected of her and what she was willing to give. In a moment of calm, Carrie took refuge in the club's luxurious bathroom. Staring at her reflection in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. The red lipstick and smoky eyes created a mask that sheltered her, but also frightened her. For a moment, she allowed the facade to fall and saw in her own eyes the fear and uncertainty she was fighting to hide. "The first night is always the hardest," said a voice behind her. It was Sophia, one of the more experienced girls at the club. She offered Carrie a sympathetic smile. "It gets easier. Or at least, you get better at pretending it does." Carrie nodded, grateful for the unexpected solidarity. "How do you deal with all this?" Sophia shrugged, a gesture that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 nights like this. "You find something to hold on to, something that reminds you why you're doing this. And you never, ever lose sight of it." Sophia's words echoed in Carrie's mind as she returned to the hall, constantly reminding herself why she was doing this. The night dragged on, a mix of expensive champagne, superficial conversations, and Vivian's constant watchfulness. When the last client left and the lights came on, Carrie felt as if she had run an emotional marathon. Vivian called her into her office, an elegant space that contrasted with the club's opulence. "You did well for a first night," she said, handing Carrie an envelope. "Your payment. I think you'll find it was worth it." Carrie opened the envelope, her eyes widening at the amount of money inside. It was more than she earned in a month at her 2 previous jobs combined. "Thank you," she murmured, the reality of her new situation finally sinking in. Vivian studied her for a moment. "Remember, Carrie, this world can be seductive, but also dangerous. Keep your goals in mind and don't lose yourself in here." Carrie nodded, placing the envelope in her bag. As she walked out of the club, the sky was beginning to lighten with the first rays of dawn. She felt strangely out of place, as if walking between 2 worlds. At home, Carrie found Jack still asleep. She put the money in a safe place and sat on the edge of his bed, watching his serene face. "It'll be okay," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I promise." As she prepared to sleep, exhausted but restless, Carrie couldn't help but wonder what the next night would bring. She had crossed a line, entered a world from which there might be no easy return. But looking at the photo of her parents on the bedside table, she remembered what Sophia had said. Find something to hold on to. With this resolve in mind, Carrie finally allowed sleep to take her, knowing that when she woke, she would have to don her new persona once again. Under the blue moonlight, She had transformed. The question now was, into what? The weeks passed in a blur of endless nights at the Blue Moon and days dedicated to Jack. Carrie precariously balanced between two worlds, her life divided between the nocturnal glamour and the simplicity of her daytime routine. Every day, she became more adept at her new profession, learning to navigate the complexities of the club with a grace that surprised even herself. On a particularly hectic afternoon, Carrie hurried to prepare dinner before her night at the club. The aroma of tomato sauce filled the small apartment as she stirred the spaghetti, her thoughts wandering between the paid bills and the savings that were beginning to accumulate. "Carrie, have you seen my blue shirt?" Jack's voice brought her back to the present. She smiled, pointing to the basket of clean clothes. "There, champ. All pressed for your presentation tomorrow." Jack grabbed the shirt, a smile lighting up his face. "You're the best, you know." Carrie's heart tightened. These moments, these little victories, were what kept her going. "Just doing my big sister job," she joked, ruffling his hair. Later, as she prepared for another night at the Blue Moon, Carrie faced her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was almost a stranger, confident, sophisticated, with a sparkle in her eyes that spoke of secrets and promises. She adjusted the red dress she now wore with ease, a gift from Vivian to up her game, as the manager had said. At the club, the atmosphere was different that night. A buzz of excitement filled the air. The low voices seemed more animated than usual. Carrie caught fragments as she moved between the tables. Exclusive contract. A lot of money involved. Chance of a lifetime. Intrigued, she approached Sophia, who was at the bar fetching drinks for her clients. "What's going on?" Carrie asked in a low voice. Sophia cast a furtive glance around before leaning closer. "There's talk of a new client. Someone important. They're saying he's looking for an exclusive companion for a year. The pay? Enough to change someone's life." Carrie's heart raced. A year of work for an amount that could change her life? The possibility was dizzying. How does someone get that contract? She heard herself asking, her voice barely above a whisper. Sophia shrugged, her eyes glinting with a mix of envy and caution. "No one knows for sure, but they say Vivian is personally selecting candidates." Before Carrie could ask more questions, Vivian appeared, her sharp gaze sweeping the room. "Girls, back to work. We have clients waiting." The night continued, but Carrie couldn't shake the thought of the contract from her mind. Every client she spoke with, every drink she served, everything felt like an audition for an opportunity that could change everything. Near the end of her shift, Vivian called her into her office. Carrie's heart leapt. Could this be about the contract? "Carrie," Vivian began, her tone neutral, revealing nothing. "You've been doing exceptionally well here." "Thank you," Carrie replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Vivian studied her for a moment, her penetrating eyes as if they could read every thought of Carrie's. "I imagine you've heard the rumors circulating tonight." Carrie nodded, not trusting her voice. "Well," Vivian continued, "there's some truth to them. We have a very special client interested in an exclusive arrangement. The pay would be substantial." The air seemed to grow thicker in the small office. Carrie felt her heart pounding against her ribs. "I'm considering some of our girls for this opportunity," Vivian proceeded. "You're among them." Carrie's mind whirled. This could be the chance she was waiting for, the escape she so desired. "What would I need to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vivian smiled, a gesture that didn't reach her eyes. "For now, keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Impress our regular clients. Show me that you have what it takes to handle someone special." Carrie nodded, feeling simultaneously thrilled and terrified. "And Carrie," Vivian added as she turned to leave. "Not a word about this to the other girls. Understood?" "Yes, of course," Carrie replied quickly. Leaving the office, she felt as if she were floating. The possibility of such a drastic change in her life was almost tangible. Later, at home, Carrie sat on the edge of Jack's bed, watching her brother sleep peacefully. The guilt that used to weigh on her every night when she returned from the club felt lighter now, replaced by a cautious hope. "Maybe," she whispered to the silent room, "maybe we can have the future Mom and Dad always dreamed for us." Lying in her own bed, Carrie stared at the ceiling, her mind brimming with possibilities. The contract could be her ticket out of this world, a chance to give Jack the life he deserved. But at what cost? As sleep finally claimed her, Carrie found herself at a crossroads. The path ahead was murky, full of promises and unknown dangers. But one thing was certain: her life was about to change drastically. The question was she truly prepared for what would come next? With these thoughts swirling in her mind, Carrie fell asleep, the whispers of change echoing in her dreams, promising a future she barely dared to imagine. The blue moon pulsed with a different energy that night. Carrie could feel the change in the air, a mix of anticipation and nervousness that seemed to infect everyone in the club. Vivian had announced that a very special client would be present, and the atmosphere was charged with expectation. Carrie adjusted her sapphire blue dress, a stunning number Vivian had personally selected for her. Remember, the manager had said earlier, her eyes gleaming with an unusual intensity, tonight could change everything for you. The words echoed in Carrie's mind as she circulated around the room, her heart beating a little faster each time the door opened. She interacted with the regular clients, but her attention was divided, always alert for the arrival of the mysterious visitor. And then she saw him. He entered the club as if he owned the place, his presence immediately capturing everyone's attention. Tall, with broad shoulders and a face that seemed sculpted by an artist, he emanated an aura of power and mystery. His eyes, a deep and penetrating blue, scanned the room with a calculating gaze before settling on Carrie. For a moment, the world seemed to slow down. Carrie felt a shiver run down her spine, a mix of fear and an emotion she could not name. The man smiled, a subtle gesture that completely transformed his austere face, and walked toward her. "Good evening," he said, his voice deep and melodious. "I'm Richard, and you must be?" "Carrie," she replied, surprising herself with the steadiness of her own voice. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Richard." He extended his hand, and when Carrie accepted it, she felt an electric current run through her body. His touch was warm, firm, and inexplicably familiar. "The pleasure is all mine, Carrie," Richard replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "May I offer you a drink?" They moved to a more secluded corner of the club, conversing with an ease that surprised Carrie. Richard was different from any other client she had encountered. He listened intently, asked perceptive questions, and seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. As the night wore on, Carrie found herself revealing more about herself than she normally would. She talked about her dreams of going back to college, her love of literature, and even mentioned Jack, though she was careful not to go into details. Richard, in turn, remained an enigma. He spoke of travels to exotic places, complex businesses, and a life that seemed straight out of a novel. But there was something in his eyes, a shadow of loneliness, that resonated deeply with Carrie. "You know," Richard said in a moment of silence, his fingers playing with the rim of his glass, "there's something about you, Carrie. Something different." Carrie felt her face heat up. "Different how?" Richard leaned in closer, his expensive cologne enveloping her. "Genuine. Real. In a place where everything is a carefully constructed illusion, you shine with a truth that is refreshing." His words took her by surprise. For a moment, Carrie forgot where she was, who she was supposed to be. She was just herself, talking to a man who seemed to truly see her. "Maybe," she responded softly, "it's because, even here, I try not to lose sight of who I really am." Richard's smile widened, reaching his eyes for the first time that night. "That's a rare and valuable quality. Never lose it." The sound of approaching heels broke the moment. Vivian appeared, her professional smile masking the curiosity in her eyes. "I hope you're enjoying your evening, Mr. Collins," she said, addressing Richard. "Immensely," he replied, his eyes never leaving Carrie. "Carrie has been delightful company." Vivian nodded, pleased. "I'm glad to hear that. Carrie is one of her best." There was an exchange of glances between Vivian and Richard that Carrie couldn't decipher. A silent agreement seemed to have been made. "Well," Richard finally said, standing up, "it was a truly memorable evening. Carrie, it was a pleasure to meet you." He took her hand once more, and Carrie felt something being pressed into her palm. As he walked away, she saw it was a business card with a handwritten phone number on the back. "I hope to see you again," Richard said, his voice laden with promise. As he walked away, Carrie felt as if she were waking from a dream. The club around her came back into focus, the murmur of conversations and clinking glasses suddenly audible again. Vivian approached, her eyes shining with a mix of approval and warning. "Well done, Carrie. But remember, business is business. Don't confuse the two." Carrie nodded automatically, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought of Richard, the unexpected connection they had shared. For the first time since she started working at the Blue Moon, she found herself eager to return, not for the money or the opportunity, but for the possibility of seeing Richard again. Later, at home, Carrie took Richard's business card from her bag. Her fingers traced the handwritten number, her heart racing as she recalled their conversation. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, Carrie found herself on the edge of something new and exciting. Richard was not just another client. He represented a possibility, a chance for something more. But with this possibility came danger. She knew that mixing emotions with her work at the Blue Moon could be disastrous, but she couldn't help the smile that spread across her lips. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to dream not just of a better future, but of the possibility of something more, something that seemed strangely like hope. Vivian's office was unusually quiet that afternoon. Carrie sat rigidly in the leather chair, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of her dress. In front of her, on the polished mahogany desk, lay a thick envelope and a multi-page contract. Vivian watched her with a mix of pride and caution. "Do you understand what this contract means, Carrie?" Carrie nodded slowly, her mind still processing everything that had been discussed in the last 30 minutes. "1 year," she said softly. "Total exclusivity." "Exactly," Vivian confirmed. 1 year as an exclusive companion for a single client. "The payment is substantial." Carrie looked at the numbers in the contract, feeling her head spin. It was more money than she had ever dreamed of seeing in her life. Enough to pay for Jack's college, buy a house, start a new life away from the Blue Moon. "And the client?" Carrie asked, though she already suspected the answer. Vivian smiled, a gesture that didn't reach her eyes. "Richard Collins. He was quite impressed with you the other night." Carrie's heart raced at the mention of Richard's name. She remembered his penetrating eyes, the connection they had shared. Part of her was thrilled at the prospect of seeing him again, but another part hesitated, aware of the emotional risks involved. "You have 24 hours to decide," Vivian continued. "Think carefully, Carrie. This is a unique opportunity." Carrie took the contract with trembling hands and left the office, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. At home, she found Jack watching TV, a pile of neglected schoolbooks at his side. "Hey, champ," she said, forcing a smile. "How was school today?" Jack shrugged, his eyes never leaving the screen. "Normal. Is there dinner?" Carrie felt a pang of guilt. She had been so preoccupied with work and the contract that she had barely had time to cook lately. "How about pizza tonight?" Jack's face lit up, and for a moment, Carrie saw the carefree boy he used to be before their parents died. It was for him, she reminded herself, that she was doing all this. Later, after Jack had gone to bed, Carrie sat at the kitchen table, the contract open in front of her. The words seemed to jump off the page. Exclusivity, discretion, compensation. She thought of Richard, of how he made her feel seen and valued. But she also thought of Vivian's warnings, of the fine line between business and emotion. The phone rang, startling her. The number on the display was unfamiliar, but something compelled her to pick it up. "Hello, Carrie." Richard's deep and familiar voice filled the line. "Richard," she replied, surprised. "I hope you don't mind," he said, a note of hesitation in his voice. "I asked Vivian for your number. I wanted to talk to you outside of the club." Carrie felt her heart race. "About the contract?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Partially," Richard admitted, "but also about us." The word us hung in the air, laden with possibilities and dangers. "Carrie," Richard continued, his voice softening, "I know this arrangement is unusual, but since that night at the club, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. There's something special between us, don't you think?" Carrie closed her eyes, recalling the connection they had shared. "Yes," she whispered. "I feel it too." "The contract," Richard explained, "is just a formality, a way to ensure we can spend time together without the club's complications. But what happens within that time, well, that's up to us." His words ignited a spark of hope in Carrie, but also intensified her internal conflict. She looked at the photo of her parents on the wall, thought of Jack sleeping in the next room, and then at the contract on the table. "Richard," she finally said, This is complicated. I know, he replied gently. And I don't expect an answer now. But I would like to see you tomorrow, outside the club, to talk. Would you agree? Carrie hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks and possibilities. Finally, she made her decision. Yes, she replied. I would like that. They arranged to meet at a discreet cafe in the city center. When Carrie hung up the phone, she felt both excited and apprehensive. Turning her attention back to the contract, she read it once more, each word now laden with new meaning. This wasn't just a business agreement. It was potentially the beginning of something deeper, more dangerous. Carrie picked up a pen, her hand hovering over the signature line. She thought of Jack, of his future, of the opportunities this money could provide. She thought of Richard, of the connection they shared, of the possibility of something real in a world of illusions. With a deep sigh, she made her choice. The pen touched the paper, and Carrie signed the contract, sealing her fate for the next year. The cafe was nearly empty when Carrie arrived, the aroma of freshly roasted beans hanging in the air. She chose a table in the corner, away from the windows, her heart beating an irregular rhythm against her ribs. The signed contract weighed in her bag, a tangible presence reminding her of the magnitude of her decision. The cafe door opened, and Richard entered. Even dressed casually, in jeans and a button-down shirt, he exuded an aura of power and sophistication. His eyes met Carrie's immediately, and a gentle smile curved his lips. "Carrie," he said, sitting across from her. "You look beautiful." She blushed, suddenly aware that this was the first time they were meeting outside the controlled environment of the Blue Moon. "Thank you, Richard. It's good to see you." For a moment, a charged silence hung between them. There's so much to be said, so many lines to be navigated. Richard was the first to break the silence. "Did you bring the contract?" Carrie nodded, pulling the envelope from her bag. "It's signed," she said softly. Richard's eyes shimmered with a mix of satisfaction and something deeper, something that made Carrie's heart leap. He took the envelope, his fingers brushing hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Carrie," he began, his voice low and intense, "I want you to understand something. This contract, it's more than just a business agreement for me." She looked at him, curious and slightly apprehensive. "What do you mean?" Richard leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Since the night we met, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. There's something between us, something rare and precious. I want to explore it, without the restraints and expectations of the club." Carrie's heart quickened. She had felt the same connection, the same magnetic pull, but hearing Richard articulate it out loud made everything much more real. "But the contract," she began, hesitant. "The contract gives us time and freedom," Richard explained. "Freedom to get to know each other, to explore whatever it is between us, without the pressures of the outside world." Carrie felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Part of her was excited about the possibility of something real with Richard, something beyond the confines of the Blue Moon. But another part was cautious, remembering Vivian's warnings about mixing business and emotion. "Richard," she said slowly, "I feel something for you too. But this is complicated. There's a lot at stake." He reached across the table to take her hand, his touch sending shivers down her spine. "I know, and I promise to respect your boundaries, Carrie. Let's take this one step at a time." The following days were an emotional roller coaster for Carrie. During the day, she took care of Jack and her household responsibilities. At night, she met Richard in discreet locations around the city. They dined at elegant restaurants, walked through moonlit parks, and talked for hours about their lives, dreams, and fears. Carrie found herself revealing things she had never shared with anyone. Her dreams of becoming a writer, her fear of failing Jack, the lingering pain of losing her parents. Richard, in turn, opened up about the loneliness of his life at the top of the corporate world, about his yearning for genuine connection in a world of superficial relationships. With each meeting, the barrier between client and companion dissolved a little more, giving way to something deeper and more authentic. One night, about a month after the contract began, Richard took her to a private concert in a small music hall. As the soft notes of a string quartet filled the air, Carrie felt Richard draw closer. "You've changed my life, you know," he whispered in her ear. Carrie turned to face him, their faces inches apart. "You've changed mine too," she admitted. The kiss that followed was gentle, tentative, laden with unspoken promises. As they parted, Carrie saw in his eyes a reflection of her own desires and fears. Back at her apartment that night, Carrie sat on the edge of her bed, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She picked up the portrait of her parents from the bedside table, tracing their smiling faces with her finger. "What am I doing?" she whispered to the photo. "This is crazy, isn't it?" But as she lay down, remembering Richard's touch, the sound of his laughter, the way he looked at her, as if she were the only person in the world, Carrie couldn't help but smile. She was falling in love, she realized, with a mix of exhilaration and terror. Falling for a man who was technically her client, in a world that didn't forgive such transgressions. The contract, which once seemed like an anchor of financial security, now became a tenuous thread between two worlds. The world of business and arrangements, and the world of emotions and unveiled desires. As sleep claimed her, Carrie wondered where this path would lead her. Was she allowing herself a dangerous dream, or discovering something truly precious? The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back. Her desires, long repressed, were finally coming to the forefront. Autumn painted the city in shades of gold and red, a perfect metaphor for the burning emotions consuming Carrie. 3 months had passed since she signed the contract, and her life had become a whirlwind of contradictory sensations. Sitting in the park, watching Jack play with other kids, Carrie allowed herself a moment of reflection. The money from the contract had provided a stability she never imagined possible. Jack was in a better school, his grades improving each week. The apartment, once cramped and shabby, was now comfortable and welcoming. But it was the emotional cost that weighed on her heart. Richard had become an integral part of her life. Their meetings, once meticulously planned and discreet, now occurred with a frequency and intimacy that both frightened and thrilled her. She found herself longing for his touch, for their deep conversations, for the way he made her feel seen and valued. "Carrie," Jack's voice brought her back to the present. "Look what I can do." She smiled, watching her brother execute a perfect somersault on the grass. "Amazing, champ," she exclaimed, her heart swelling with love and pride. That night, while preparing dinner, the phone rang. It was Richard. "Are you free tonight?" His deep voice resonated through the line, sending shivers down her spine. Carrie hesitated, looking at Jack as he did his homework at the kitchen table. "I don't know if I can." "Jack is here. Bring him," Richard suggested, surprising her. "There's a new amusement park in town. I thought we could go, the 3 of us." Carrie's heart raced. Until now, she had kept Richard and Jack in separate worlds. The idea of bringing them together, of allowing these two parts of her life to meet, was both exciting and terrifying. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Absolutely," Richard replied, sincerity evident in his voice. "I want to know all parts of your life, Carrie, including Jack." 2 hours later, Carrie found herself walking through the amusement park, Jack running ahead, his eyes shining with the colorful lights of the rides. Richard walked beside her, his hand occasionally brushing against hers. "He's amazing," Richard commented, watching Jack with a smile. "Exactly as you described." Carrie felt a rush of emotion pass through her. Seeing Richard interact with Jack, buying him cotton candy, helping him on rides, broke something inside her. It was when they were on the Ferris wheel, Jack asleep between them after hours of fun, that Richard turned to her, his eyes serious. "Carrie," he began, his voice low and intense, "I need to tell you something." She felt her heart speed up, a mix of anticipation and fear settling in her stomach. "I'm in love with you," Richard said simply, the words hanging in the air between them. Carrie felt as if the world had stopped. Part of her wanted to throw herself into his arms, confess that she loved him too, that he had become the center of her world. But another part, the part that remembered Vivian's warnings, that thought of the contract and the complications that would follow, held her back. "Richard," she began, her voice trembling, "I feel something very strong for you too. But this is so complicated. The contract, the blue moon, our situation." He took her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know, and I'm willing to face all those complications. Because what we have, Carrie, is real. It's precious, and I don't want to lose it. The tears Carrie had been holding back finally fell. I'm so scared, she confessed. Scared of giving into this and losing everything. Scared of not giving in and regretting it for the rest of my life. Richard pulled her close, careful not to wake Jack. I understand your fear, but I promise, Carrie, that I'll do everything in my power to protect you and Jack. You become my family. The word family echoed in Carrie's heart. How long had it been since she felt that? This sense of belonging, of safety? When they got off the Ferris wheel, Jack still asleep in Richard's arms, Carrie knew she was on the brink of a decision that would change her life forever. The contract, which once seemed like her salvation, now felt like a prison. She wanted more. She wanted a real life with Richard, a chance to build something genuine and lasting. But Vivian's words echoed in her mind. Business is business. Don't confuse the two. And there was Jack to consider. What would happen if it all went wrong? That night, after Richard left them home and Jack was safely in bed, Carrie sat in the living room, looking out at the city through the window. Her heart was divided, pulled in opposite directions by love and fear, by desire and duty. She knew a decision had to be made. Continue with the contract, maintaining financial security, but potentially losing the chance for true love, or risk everything for Richard, for a chance at real happiness. As the city's lights glittered outside, Carrie closed her eyes, her heart in turmoil. The future was uncertain, full of possibilities and dangers. But one thing was clear. She could no longer live in this limbo. It was time to make a choice, to follow her heart or her head. Rain fell softly over the city, creating a melancholy rhythm against Carrie's apartment windows. She sat on the couch, a cup of tea cooling between her hands, her eyes fixed on the door. Richard would arrive any moment, and she knew the conversation they would have tonight would change everything. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions. Since the night at the amusement park when Richard confessed his love, Carrie had felt torn between the euphoria of a shared love and the crushing weight of fear and uncertainty. The sound of the doorbell pulled her from her thoughts. With a racing heart, she got up to open the door. Richard stood there, his hair slightly damp from the rain, his eyes intensely focused on her. "Carrie," he said softly, as if her name were a prayer. She let him in, the silence between them filled with unspoken words. For a moment, they stood there, face to face, the tension palpable in the air. It was Carrie who finally broke the silence. "Richard, we need to talk." He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know." They sat on the couch, a careful distance between them. Carrie took a deep breath, gathering the courage to say the words she needed to. "I love you," she began, her voice trembling but determined. "And that terrifies me." Richard started to speak, but she raised a hand, asking for silence. "Please, let me finish. I need you to understand everything." She then began to tell her story, about the sudden responsibility of caring for Jack, about sleepless nights worrying about bills and an uncertain future. She told him how the blue moon seemed like her only way out, how the contract promised the financial security she desperately craved. But then, she continued, tears now freely flowing down her face, "You happened. Not just as a client or a contract, but as someone who saw beyond the facade, someone who made me feel alive again." Richard listened attentively, his eyes filled with emotion. When Carrie finally paused, he leaned in, taking her hands in his. "Carrie," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "I have confessions to make too." He then revealed his own story. He spoke about the burden of running a corporate empire, about the loneliness at the top, about failed relationships, and constant mistrust of people's intentions around him. The blue moon, he explained, was an escape, a place where I could have companionship without emotional complications. But then I met you, and everything changed. Richard told her how, from their first meeting, he felt something different with Carrie, how their conversations touched him in a way no one else had in years, how he began to yearn not just for her company, but for her presence in his life. The contract, he admitted, was initially a way to keep you close, but it quickly became a prison. Because what I feel for you, Carrie, goes far beyond any business arrangement. Carrie felt her heart pounding furiously. Every word Richard spoke echoed her own feelings, her own fears and hopes. "But what now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What does this leave us? Richard moved closer, holding Carrie's face in his hands. It leaves us at a point of choice. The contract, the blue moon, all those complications, we can leave it all behind. We can start anew. Carrie. You, me, and Jack. A real family. The word family made Carrie's heart leap. But what if it doesn't work out? She asked, the fear still present in her voice. What if we lose everything? Richard smiled gently. What if it does work out? What if it's the best decision we've ever made? Carrie, I can't promise it will be easy, but I can promise that I'll fight for us every day. For you, for Jack, for the future we can build together. At that moment, looking into Richard's eyes, Carrie felt something break inside her. All the barriers she had built, all the fears holding her back, seemed to dissolve. With a sob that was half laugh, half cry, she threw herself into Richard's arms. Yes, she whispered against his chest. Yes to everything. To us. To a new beginning. To a life together. Richard held her tight, his own tears mingling with hers. For long moments, they stayed there, embraced, letting the reality of their decision envelop them. When they finally pulled apart, there was a new light in both their eyes. A light of hope, of love, of possibilities. So, Richard said, a smile forming on his lips, what do we do now? Carrie laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. Now, she replied, we start a new story. Together. As the rain continued to fall outside, inside the apartment, a new chapter was being written. A chapter of truths revealed, of confessions made, and of a love that promised to overcome all adversities. The night wore on as Carrie and Richard remained entwined on the couch, their confessions still echoing in the air. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with promises and possibilities. Richard gently brushed a strand of hair from Carrie's face, his eyes brimming with love. You are so beautiful, he whispered, leaning in for a gentle kiss. The kiss, tender at first, soon deepened, laden with all the emotion and desire they had repressed for so long. Carrie felt herself melt into Richard's arms, her entire being responding to his touch. The following hours were a blur of intense sensations and deep connection. Every touch, every whisper, every exchanged glance solidified the bond between them. It was not just physical desire, but a union of souls finally meeting. When the first rays of sun streamed through the window, Carrie woke in Richard's arms. She watched him sleep for a moment, her heart overflowing with love and certainty. Good morning, Richard murmured, opening his eyes with a sleepy smile. Carrie smiled back, feeling truly happy for the first time in years. Good morning. They spent the morning talking, planning, dreaming. Carrie's decision was clear. She would terminate her contract with the Blue Moon. It was time to start a new life, one based on true love and genuine choices. I have to talk to Vivian today, Carrie said, determination in her voice. I need to close this chapter of my life once and for all. Richard nodded, holding her hand. Do you want me to come with you? Carrie considered for a moment, then shook her head. No, this is something I need to do on my own. But thank you for offering. Later that day, Carrie entered Vivian's office at the Blue Moon, feeling nervous but resolute. Vivian observed her with keen eyes. You've made a decision, she stated, not a question. Carrie nodded. Yes, I'm ending the contract, Vivian. I'm leaving the Blue Moon. To her surprise, Vivian smiled gently. I knew this day would come. You and Richard, there's something special there. You're not angry? Carrie asked, surprised. Vivian shook her head. Carrie, in this business, we see many things. We rarely see true love. When it happens, well, who am I to stand in the way? With tears in her eyes, Carrie hugged Vivian, grateful for her understanding. As she left the Blue Moon for the last time, Carrie felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Richard was waiting outside, Jack by his side. It's done? Richard asked softly. Carrie nodded, a smile lighting up her face. It's done. We're free to start our new life. Jack looked between them, confused but hopeful. What does that mean? Carrie knelt down in front of her brother, her eyes shining. It means, champ, that we're going to be a family. You, me, and Richard. Are you ready for a new adventure? Jack's smile was answer enough. As they walked together down the street, towards their future, Carrie felt her heart swell with love and possibilities. The journey ahead would be challenging, she knew. There was much to learn, much to overcome. But with Richard by her side and Jack safe, Carrie was ready to face any obstacle. This was just the beginning of their new story. A story of love, family, and second chances. And Carrie couldn't wait to see where it would lead them. If you enjoyed the story, don't miss the next ones appearing on your screen. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more. It means the world to us. See you next time.